I had the unfortunate experience of being a student in my mother's classroom. She was widely recognized to be a fantastic English teacher, and to this day, I thank her for drumming English grammar rules into me. But she was a traditionalist. We sat in rows, answered when asked a question, and she was totally and thoroughly in command of the class. I can still picture her grade 7 classroom with a large poster above the blackboard that stated, "Speech is silver and silence is golden." I'm sure some of you also recognize that from your school days. Yes, I survived my education, but the world then was so different. Hi everyone, my name is Elmarie Potgieter, and in this video I will be sharing with you some ideas on unteaching teachers. Teachers today are still teaching the same way as teachers taught 100 years ago. Is this right? How could you, as a school headmaster or as a fellow teacher, unteach teachers and change the teaching practices in your school? So much has changed with the onset of the internet. The world has shrunk. People communicate differently. Children live virtual lives in virtual worlds and are bombarded by information. Did you know that 1 week's worth of information in the New York Times is the equivalent of a whole year of information that the average New Yorker was exposed to in the 18th century? The world has changed. So it's only logical that teachers have to change their approaches. We have to unlearn practices that have been, in some cases, embedded in us since our own schooling days. That said, we also know how extremely difficult it is to change our own ways. Have you tried a new exercise regime, or to change your eating habits, or to adopt new technology in your own teaching practice? If changing ourselves is so hard, how can we hope to help teachers to change themselves, to unlearn old practices and to adopt new ones? Well, here's how. Teachers change their behavior and adopt new practices when their belief systems have changed. And beliefs don't just change as a result of attending a workshop or reading an inspiring blog. As Larry Cuban quite rightly points out, teacher repertoires have been shaped by the crucible of experience and the culture of teaching. Policymakers need to understand that altering pedagogy requires a change in what teachers believe. Getting professionals to unlearn in order to learn, while certainly not impossible, is closer in magnitude of difficulty to be performing a double bypass heart operation than to hammering a nail. So what was the crucible of my own experience in changing my own beliefs? I was a student in my mother's class, and that was pretty much how most of my school life was like. Then I went to university, and we all know how that works. The long benches and the continuous lecturing, and lo and behold, I found myself back in my own high school as a brand new teacher. And at first, I taught my class in exactly the same way, by lecturing. This was what I knew. This was my comfort zone. And my beliefs in teaching would have remained the same if I hadn't met an amazing woman in South Africa. Tana Pienaar was the principal of my school in South Africa, and she changed my life. She introduced me to cognitive education and sent me on training courses, and I learned about multiple intelligences and ways to hand over the learning to my students. Once I changed the way I taught, and I saw how those previously disinterested township boys became excited about being in the class, despite being packed into a classroom with 40 others, I couldn't stop reading and inquiring into what else I could do. This was when my belief systems changed. And until today, I haven't stopped learning and experimenting because I've seen the impact on the lives of school children all over the world. I can recall many aha moments during which teachers were confronted with the impact of approaching learning differently in their classrooms. And one of my favorite memories was that of Mrs. Zahra and her Year 1 class in Al Ain in the UAE. It was a phonics class, and she was using Jolly Phonics to teach them new sounds. She would make the sound and the movement, and the children would chant after her. I could see that the children already knew the sounds and the movements, and they were just parroting. I couldn't help myself. I intervened. Yes, I know one shouldn't, but I simply couldn't stop myself. So I asked her if I could model a cooperative learning structure called Rally Robin, with the little ones standing in pairs, taking turns to either make the Jolly Phonics movement or to respond with a sound. They did so well. The sounds flowed from one to the other. They were confident. They had fun. But this was not what was stuck in my head. It was the expression on Ms. Zahra's face. Total and complete astonishment. Her mouth was literally hanging open. She told me afterwards, "I cannot believe what I'm seeing. I didn't know they could do this." This was the moment of change for her. She realized that what we had presented in the training session, a session on cooperative learning that she attended, really worked. Mrs. Zahra went on to become a passionate advocate of cooperative learning in her school. When we consider changing teachers' practices, we have to remember that the concept of what a teacher is supposed to be has been formed over centuries. I only recently discovered that the word teacher is derived from the Old English word tikan, which means to show, point out, or give instruction. And in 2090, the pointed index finger also became widely known as the teacher. And only after 1300 did the word become associated with its modern meaning as the one who teaches. Note the irony. Point out, show, a pointed finger. Most of us who survived education during the past few decades can relate. Our collective mental image of a teacher is definitely not equitable with that of a guide or a facilitator or a person who stands behind you or next to you while you are empowered to move at your pace, steering through a terrain that keeps you engaged and on the edge of your seat with excitement, ready for the next adventure. Perhaps it is time to make a radical move and get rid of teaching. Not for a moment am I suggesting that we should get rid of professionals who support our children in schools, but rather that we should focus on a meaningful process that equips the learner with what David Perkins calls life-worthy learning. We have to take note of what the industry is saying about the products of our education. By that, I mean the students who leave school after 12 years, unequipped with the ability to communicate, collaborate, think critically, innovate. But how is this going to happen when it is so notoriously difficult to change teacher practice? In my experience as a teacher training, and as the developer of large-scale education transformation programs, I've learned that the best way to change teachers' practice is through peer support and peer learning. A very effective practice in schools across the 3 continents I've been working in has been the creation of professional learning communities, where teachers find a safe zone, a space where mistakes are seen as learning opportunities. In professional learning communities, teachers explore new ways of solving problems together. They identify learner needs and the problems they are facing, and then work together to experiment with different pedagogical practices. They share and celebrate successes, and they also appreciate one another as critical friends. Professional learning within the 4 walls of schools is much more affordable and sustainable. A fact that is underscored by Diane Yendol-Hoppey and Nancy Dana in their read-worthy book. So here are 5 things for you to consider before you expect teachers to change their practice? Number one, teachers must want to change. The teacher has to feel the need for change, and each teacher will have different needs to be addressed. Once they know their own areas of improvement, relevant professional learning opportunities can be identified that meets their individual learning needs. Teachers must then also see this change demonstrated and modeled. Only once teachers see the practices in action do they buy into the value that it could bring in their own environment. So just like Mrs. Zahra, who only really appreciated the power of cooperative learning the day I modeled it for her in the classroom. The third thing to remember is that teachers must experience the change. Before a teacher's belief system will change, that teacher will have to experience the change in their learners. They must practice the skills and implement it in their classrooms. And once they see the improved outcomes of their learners, the engagement, the joy that comes along with feeling that you are really affecting change, only then will the change become sustainable. It will become part of the teacher's DNA. The fourth thing to remember is that teachers should receive coaching and feedback. Peer coaching works better than when superiors merely observe and fill in feedback forms afterwards. We should encourage an open door policy. We should deprivatize learning and teaching and invite others into our classrooms. In Mrs. Zahra's case, she received coaching from our advisory team, her head of department, and eventually she became a coach of others. She did that thing that teachers so rarely do. She invited her peers into her classroom to observe her and give feedback, and that was instrumental to the change that she experienced. The fifth and last thing to remember is that you should try to create communities of practice. Communities of practice in your school that demonstrate the importance of ongoing learning and stress the importance of failing as a learning opportunity helps teachers to feel supported and that it is safe to take risks. We won't always get it right the first time, and without reflection on the impact of new approaches, this learning might be lost. This reflection is what happens in professional learning communities when we think about the impact of our new strategies on our students. So, have you identified a teacher who needs to unlearn embedded practices? Here are the questions you need to ask before you can succeed. How is the teacher's learning needs or need identified? How will the teacher receive the new learning? Who will model and coach practices to this teacher? Does this teacher belong to an effective professional learning community? How will you support him or her in ensuring that he or she plans for, practices the strategies, receives feedback, and reflects on the impact on his or her students? If you want to learn more about the building blocks of effective professional learning, I want to recommend that you read the book by Diane Yendol-Hoppey and Nancy Dana called Powerful Professional Development: Building Expertise Within the Four Walls of Your School. This is one of the most compelling and practical books I've ever read on professional learning, and I'm including the link in the video description below. Also consider investing time to learn more about change management, emotional intelligence, and very importantly, mindfulness. In the next video, we will talk about how you can meet the needs of all your learners. If you like these videos, follow me on Facebook for more ideas. The link is in the description below. And if you like this video, give me a thumbs up. And if you would like to talk to me about making a change in your school, email me at almarie@right.education. See you in the next video. Also consider investing time